Hey everybody, welcome back. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Today I'm going to go over something that is near and dear to my heart, and that is how much gear is too much gear? When is less is more is more, less is less, etc., etc., etc. So, I was thinking about this and I thought it would be kind of a fun topic. Let me give you a little bit of background and context about why I'm bringing this up. I began playing drums in the 60s, and, like many of you, went the whole route of got a toy kit for Christmas, bought my first kind of real kit, then bought a used kit, bought my first real kit. I remember it. It was when Ludwig Vistalites first came out. I think it was around 1974. I had no idea about gear. I just knew I wanted Ludwig, et cetera, et cetera. So then I think it was around 77. I was in a music store and I saw the Modern Drummer magazine. And I couldn't believe it was a magazine for drummers. My head was blown apart. And that started like a 40-year journey. I bought issue number 3 and I owned every one for probably about 40 plus years. That's when I became a true drum nerd, because I started to really learn about brands and tuning and gear and cymbals and brands and choices and blah, blah, blah. So to me, more is more. I have owned in my lifetime literally a virtual drum shop worth of gear. And this is kind of why I'm making this video, sort of like where I'm at today and sort of reflecting back. In my acoustic days, late 60s, 70s, early 80s, it was all about acoustics. I owned a couple of Ludwig drum sets. I owned a few snares, different pedals, and I started to learn about the differences between Zildjian A's, which I started with, Zildjian K's, DW pedals came out in the 80s, etc., etc. But I went from having kind of a standard kit to a double kick, and the next thing I know, I added 3 concert toms because I wanted to be just like Neil from Rush, and then I started to get into all of these other drummers. I had so many different drummers that I was following at that point. I started buying China cymbals. I had a Zildjian Pang that I loved. I bought a Paiste gong. I bought a glockenspiel. I had double octave of Zildjian crotales, which were fabulous. Mark tree, wind chimes, whatever you want to call them. I had them all. I had all kinds of sounds and mallets and textures, etc. I just kept buying gear. Oh, I also bought a set of tubular bells, believe it or not. I bought those, I don't even remember when, probably in the late 70s. So I had it all. Bought it, thought it was really cool, used it for a while, sold it. So my sort of buy-sell mode started way back in the 70s. That continued on to the 80s. 80s, I started to get into more, at that point, new wave, alternative, that type of stuff that was coming out more electronic in the 80s. I owned the original Roland 808, upgraded it to the 909, bought the first Roland Octopad, which had no sounds in it, so I believe I had to MIDI it to the 909. I bought the original, I think before that, I actually bought the original Sin drums, do, and that was fun for about 16 minutes until you got tired of the do, and I sold those. I started to scale back my kit. My ear started to change. I started adapting more from Zildjian A's to Zildjian K's. Started to learn more about different size hats, etc. So I'm continuing buying, selling gear as we move along. Now the 90s come along. And first time I saw the Roland TD7 kit when it was brand new, my head was blown apart. I didn't buy that because I tried it many times, wasn't thrilled with the small rubber pads, even though I currently still own a few. And then the TD10 came out, which I believe was 96 or 7. And instantly I saw that and said, gotta have that. So I did. I bought the TD10 and that started my Roland journey of V-drums. Absolutely loved that kit. Every time Roland came out with anything, any new pad, any new upgrade, I had to have it. So at that point, I was still hybrid. I was still had an acoustic kit, but I had my electronics, and my electronics were serving me well, really well at home. So again, this topic of today is less, more is more, etc., etc. And I'm kind of getting to that. I'm just giving you my background. So I've bought since, the 90s, I just a virtual ton of electronic gear. In the early 2000s, I started to get into sampling. I have owned the original SPD-S sampling pad. When the SX came out, I remember buying that, and I didn't use it much afterwards, so I sold that. And then I rebought it because I figured that, I really want to get into sampling, and I did. I really got into it deeply. And then I upgraded to the SX. So for about 20 years, I was heavily into sampling. I did another video about multipads. Suffice it to say, today on my kit, I still have my Octapad, which I love. And on the other side over there is my Nordrum 3P, which I love. I no longer use samplers. I did own the Korg with the MPS 10, the new one. I bought that because I was intrigued. Didn't really like it for a whole bunch of reasons. Again, I went over that in another video. But, sampling is really hard. It takes a lot of time and effort. And there are a lot of pluses and minuses to it. I mean, it can do anything. Again, in the spirit of today, the what if scenario and the more is more, less and less is less type of thing. Like, at what point, me personally, I had to start kind of wrestling with things. So let me continue on. In our prior home, I had a studio. I had 2 drum sets in there. I had a full electronic set, and I had a full hybrid set. Absolutely loved having hybrid in that setup. I used to use electronics and acoustics mixed together. Went through it all. I think I had a Yamaha EAD-10, which I kind of liked, but I thought there were some limitations to it. I used full mic set, and then I realized after watching a few guys on YouTube, I really started to think about that as far as, I'm not an engineer. So, I really got into the whole minimal thing, and that's why I used the EAD. I sold off the EAD, so I went with the rolling trigger on my kick into one of my modules, and I used one Audio-Technica overhead. It really captured the whole kit really well. So my second kit became my experimental kit, and this is kind of where I went really, double down or triple down and went deep into all kinds of things. So I bought a machine, and I thought this would be great. I can create all of these different loops, etc. And then realized very quickly, I don't know what I'm doing with this thing, and I'm spending all my time playing fingers, and I'm a drummer. But I bought it, and it was really cool, and I sold it off. I had my SPD-SX at that point. A little bit later, upgraded to the Pro. Loved it, used it extensively for that kit. Korg wave drum. I didn't buy the original wave drum, which was the one that looked like the toilet seat that Danny Carey uses, but I did buy the new one that came out, probably early 2000s, with the silver rim. Like, most fun, coolest device you could ever have. Excuse me. I had it for a while, loved it, a lot of textures with it, sold it off. I don't know why, probably got tired of using it. Again, all these choices. Sold that off. And then the Global Edition came out, I bought that, loved that. One of the greatest tools you can use, because you can play it with brushes, mallets, sticks, hands. It's so expressive, it's so much fun. When we moved here to the condo, I realized I can't have the wave drum because it just makes too much acoustic noise. Between the real head, and by the way, I put a mesh head on it too, but it didn't trigger correctly. So I put the real head back on it. Between the real head and the steel rim, etc., it's just too loud. And quite frankly, I was starting to change musically about, kind of where I was going directionally. So sold that off. I realized just a few months back, late last year, I wasn't using my SX Pro as much because there was just too much time. And that kind of gets to the fundamental of today's conversation. When is enough gear enough? And I love that term GAS, gear acquisition syndrome, which I live and die by. I always spend time searching. I'm looking online constantly. I'm keeping up with gear. I'm on YouTube far more than I should be. Even today, I'm always looking for that latest, greatest. Even though I have this, I literally have every drum in the world at my fingertips right here, right now, between my modules and my VST. I have every drum, cymbal, percussion, weird sound, etc., at my fingertips 24/7. And that's overload. But I really wasn't studying. And that, a few years ago, I'll call it 5, 6 years ago, I really focused down on my practice pad work, my development as a drummer. And at the same time, I had this other kit going on. That other kit was just so much fun. I had the SX or SX Pro, the wave drum. I had a regular 4-piece kit set up. I was triggering acoustic and electronic drums. I had a real hat and a real crash. And I was trying all different combinations of different cymbals there. I had the wave drum. I had my Nord drum, which, by the way, I think I owned the Nord drum twice. Bought it, thought it was weird. After a while, sold it, and then I realized, I could really use this tool. And that's kind of you're thinking about what can I do with this thing? So, I had all these multi-pads going, and every day I would play on the kit, and I would study and do my practice pad work, but then I'd do most of my recording on the experimental kit. And then after a few years of posting, 1,000 videos of weirdness, it was like just me being a drummer geek. Just like, hey, what weird sounds can I make today? By the way, I also bought I have a mixer now, a Zoom L12 that I really like a lot. At that point, I think I had a Yamaha mixer. I bought a Mackie sub mixer. I bought a Line 6 FX effects. This effects box that had, hundreds and hundreds of different effects on it. And what I was doing was I was putting the Octopad Nord and wave drum through the Line 6. So I could get this, let's say it was a marimba type sound or bells or something on the Octopad, and it sounded okay. And then I click a few buttons on the Line 6, and all of a sudden it sounded like Tony Iommi's guitar from Black Sabbath. There was like real fuzz or these delays or these echoes. So much fun. And literally, my days, so much of my time was pushing buttons and just saying, hey, what if? I just love sounds. Sounds inspire me. I still do today with this kit. I constantly change my kits over and over and over and over. Whatever I dial up is exactly the style that I'll play with. At that point, I was doing a lot of electronics, and that was literally more is more. The point of all of that, what I'm bringing up here, is at some point I was realizing I was spending so much of my time tweaking and dialing dials. And I wasn't playing. I wasn't really progressing as a drummer. And I was noticing as I was playing, a lot of it was same. And I really wasn't, I wasn't taking my studies and transitioning to the kit. But something from Tommy Igo, there was a video posted, I think during COVID, and I forget who did it. Maybe it was Modern Drummer, I forget. But they interviewed maybe about a dozen or so drummers and wanted to see what their home studios look like. And I remember Tommy said something. I really value him as a teacher. I subscribe to his teaching methods a lot. If you have his video, like his Great Hands for a Lifetime video is a game changer. He's just such a fabulous drummer and a great educator. There are so many other guys online that I appreciate as well too. Al Drumeo, Mike Johnston, etc., etc. So many drummers that I still follow today and I get tips from. Anyway, Tommy said, in his studio, he talked about simplicity, and his whole thing is about simplicity. What he was talking about was he only had a couple snares. I think he has one kit, maybe two. He's got a handful of cymbals. He talked about his recording and mix console. But his whole thing was about simplicity, and he said, if you remove all that noise, you're really going to focus on the instrument and the music, and that really hit home, as far as saying when you have so many choices like this. Again, I can have every sound I want imaginable at my fingertips. There's an overload at some point. When do you kind of draw the line between enough and too much? Now that said, something else comes out tomorrow and my head's blown apart. I'm going to figure out how to buy it. But I'm also at the point now of saying I spend more time on my gear playing than I do futzing around with sounds and so forth. I don't spend as much time today, and I can certainly get into a rabbit hole of diving, menu diving in here. Now the good news is I've played V drums so long. When I have a sound in my mind or an effect in my mind, I know how to get it pretty quickly. So I tend to sort of go in there, and I know if I want real, I power up my VSTs. And even that, I have SD3, Easy D3, I have expansion packs. So again, I have, I don't know, hundreds of drum sets and sounds available through my laptop. So, I wrestle with is more, is less more, and I still do today. And I think it's healthy to sort of, you always want to make sure you have the tools available in your head. But I think my lesson here, having bought so much gear, sold so much gear, and I'm constantly looking for the what if, is at some point you yourself have to kind of draw that balance of saying, what gear do I really need? There's the want. The amount of effects inside of a module is mind-blowing. You can take a kit and twist it any way you want. So, today I choose to spend more of my time playing drums, learning drums, trying to get my craft at being a drummer better, with a side note of I still love electronics. I love sounds, as I said. I love exploring. I love what if. And, my mind was thinking this morning, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I MIDI'd my drum set to my Octopad, and I've MIDI'd it to the Nord before, and I think I did one video, just as a what if. And it blew my head apart because your drums are actually firing the Nord, which is all of this weird stuff. But if you've seen any of the Jojo Mayer, I think it's Me Machine, it's just absolutely mind-blowing. He has world-class playing ability, chops, but his mind in terms of electronics is so far ahead. It's just so cool and so different. And that's inspiring. And I kind of hope today does that for you a little bit. It inspires you to kind of think about your gear, buy what you want, keep what you need. To me, is if I don't use a piece of gear after a while, I sell it off. I let somebody else go at it. But finally gotten to the point where it's like, okay, what's enough and what's too much? Too many choices is just almost like mind overload. So focus kind of where you want to go, what you think. Leave the door open of the what if, explore, learn, keep doing things. I'm saying leave your mind open. One of my favorite sayings is, a mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. I've used that line constantly, and I love that. So to me, electronics is that. I can play a regular set if I want, or I can just blow my head apart and go for the wildest thing I can possibly even dream about. And I love that. But I also know enough now to kind of reel it in and say, okay, what do I want to get done today? What are my goals? What's my system that I'm working on? So I'm constantly working on that and not spending too much time just going after stuff or going after sounds. Again, it's all about your playability, your musicianship, and playing music. I hope today helps you in your own journey. As always, thanks for watching. And if you have any questions or comments, hit me up below.